It is my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars podcast. We got a lot of news this week. Got some video game news, got some Lego holiday show news, some more news about the Bad Batch. We'll talk a little Bad Batch Season 1, Part 1 finale. Season 2 has been announced. If you want to board the Galactic Star Cruiser at Walt Disney World, I'll tell you how much that's going to cost you. Plus, a really fantastic article, a lengthy piece that we'll spend some time working through. Star Wars Inside Intel, Palpatine's Contingency Plan. And I love content like this coming out of Star Wars, because in a world where there is so much unnecessary negativity, well, let's just stop there, right? No, unnecessary negativity, in my opinion, when it comes to the sequel trilogy. I like it when we get official Star Wars content that tries to add another layer of context on top of the saga film stories that have been told. This is a really, really fantastic piece, and about one of my favorite characters in the series, and the highlight for me of The Rise of Skywalker. As always, if you want to email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get to the show this week.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
Hey, it's Jon Justice here for my nerd world, ready to talk some Star Wars for this weekend of August 7th, 2021. I usually end the show on this, but I'm going to start the show this way. I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, you are safe, and you are enjoying yourself some Star Wars to take your mind off the ridiculous world that we live in right now. We got a lot of news to get to this week, so let's start here. Disney World, Walt Disney World, officially released the price points and details for their Galactic Star Cruiser. Now, if this is your first time hearing about the Galactic Star Cruiser, basically, what it is it's a hotel. So at Walt Disney World, you'll arrive at this hotel, which is doubling as a spaceport. And it is a completely immersive experience where you and your guests will be able to spend 2 nights inside this hotel, which is basically you spending 2 nights, part of it back down on Earth, or Batuu, we'll get to that, on the Galactic Star Cruiser. And it's a completely immersive experience. When you go into your hotel room, you have windows to the outside, but you're going to be looking outside into space. You will be completely immersed into the world of Star Wars. Very much in the same way of Galaxy's Edge, which I cannot wait to get to sometime in the near future. I'm so desperate to get to Disneyland. You have no idea how much I miss Disneyland. And the fact that I haven't been able to go to Galaxy's Edge yet is driving me nuts. But this sounds like a really cool experience. They have a lot of different immersive activities going on during your stay. Of course, everybody is in character. Choices that you make, right? And Imagine it like a Star Wars escape room, but it's storytelling, right? You're part of the story and the theatrics. At some point, you'll return back down to a planet where you will exit the Galactic Star Cruiser pod that brings you back down to your visit to Hollywood Studios and to Galaxy's Edge, as to maintain all a part of this immersive experience. My understanding is you will go into the spaceport, which is the hotel, and they will simulate you with a group of individuals traveling up to board the Galactic Star Cruiser. So how much is this going to cost you for this immersive experience? Well, it ain't going to be cheap. 2 full nights for 2 persons is going to cost you about $4,000. For 3 people, about $5,200. And for, I believe, 4 people, 4 or 5, it's $6,000. Is the price going to be worth it? It better be, right? I was talking to my wife, Melinda, about this, and it'll be on my bucket list of things to do. This sounds awesome, and sounds as close as you could possibly ever get to sort of experiencing life in the Star Wars universe in a completely immersive experience. It just sounds just like an absolute ton of fun, and worth every penny if they do it right. But it's going to be. And the reason why I don't have any doubt that it's going to be worth every penny, it's because word of mouth of this is going to spread fast. If you go and drop $4,000 for 2 nights and the vast majority of people that experience this come back and go, that wasn't worth the price, then you failed, right? So I imagine that it'll definitely be worth the price. I have heard a lot of complaining from people that, you've priced a lot of people out of it, and you have when you charge something like that. The same thing happens with the Disneyland parks as well. But you do get what you pay for. And this is not going to be an inexpensive experience for Disney to have to put on. It's not like you're going to be able to... And look, and I'm defending something that doesn't really need to be defended. I don't have any part of Galactic Star Cruiser, and I certainly can't afford to do this right now. I'll be saving up money after I save up money to go to the park so I can go to Galaxy's Edge. I'll save up again so that one day I can add this to a bucket list and probably plan on doing it like multi-years out, because I'm sure there's going to be reservations for a long time to come. But when you think about the price and the amount of entertainment you're going to receive, how most of it's inclusive, right? It includes all your food and your drinks and beverages and things like that. But when it comes to like the staffing of something like this, you're not just going to be able to hire individuals to run, cash registers. You're going to have to hire, actors, and people are going to have to be wearing costumes all the time. So this is a live, almost like I said, theatrical experience. So I'm excited for it. I can't wait until it opens next year just to hear people's reaction about it, and then ultimately, of course, make a decision on whether or not it's worth the price of admission and if I want to save the money to go and do it. But I think it looks awesome. I think it's super cool, and you can't help but wonder if it's one of those things where if Walt Disney World ends up having a lot of success with Galactic Star Cruiser, why couldn't that be replicated at other places around the country? And it's always been a question of mine that I've had when it comes to the Disneyland parks as it is. I'm a big Disneyland fan. I mean, I grew up in Southern California and had an annual pass, would go multiple times a week. As a kid growing up, I mean, from the earliest age I can remember, we would go once a year. And again, when I got into my late teens, early 20s, and I had an annual pass, we would go all the time. And even when we moved to Arizona, we were still doing a yearly trip. This is arguably the longest stretch in my entire life at 49 years old that I've ever gone without going to Disneyland, considering that most likely, I probably had been going to Disneyland since like the age of 5, right? When Star Wars came out, I'm sure that I'd been to the park by then, and we were probably going once a year because that was just a tradition in our family. So if you want more details on this, head on over to StarWars.com. You can check out the articles there that have been written about it, and a lot of the concept art of the hotel rooms and what the Star Cruiser looks like. I think it looks awesome, and I lost my train of thought, but my point was going to be, I'm surprised that Disney hasn't set up like smaller Disneyland quality parks around the country, but I understand the desire they have to send people to these particular locations, right? You don't want to give people other options to go to smaller Disneyland parks, but I would be very interested to see if the Galactic Star Cruiser ended up being lucrative for them, if at some point they decided to maybe place one of these in a larger metropolitan area somewhere, like a Dallas, Texas, or, certainly at some point put one at Disneyland, California, or at least somewhere in California. There's probably no more space at Disneyland. So, again, go on by StarWars.com, or just if you Google Galactic Star Cruiser prices, a gazillion articles are gonna pop up for you to go and look at. All right, so Disney also announced some shows that will be taking place later on this year. The Dark Side strikes back in a terrifying way this October. Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales, an original special, starts streaming on October 1st on Disney+. Looking forward to it. I thought the holiday special was a lot of fun. I like the Star Wars Lego content. It's not something that I return to watch often, but I will wipe out on the Freemakers or, any of the Lego Star Wars shows on Disney Plus on occasion. If I'm sitting down to have lunch and I just want to watch a little bit of Star Wars for a few minutes, I'll go and sit down and watch one of them. October and Halloween is one of my favorite holidays next to Christmas, so I'm excited to see what Lego Star Wars has to offer. And I'm really hoping, and I can't imagine it won't, I imagine that it will, but I'm really hoping we get some Vader's Castle in the show, right? And you're probably going to. That seems like a given. But I want more content from Vader's Castle. I think Vader's Castle is awesome. It's my favorite part of Rogue One. I have the graphic novel, right? The Tales from Vader's Castle here on my bed for reading at night when I want. So I'm really curious to see what this is. It sounds like a lot of fun, and it's but more Star Wars content is always a good thing. They did announce this week, ahead of part 1 of the season finale, which I just got done watching a moment ago, and I'll share with you my thoughts, that Bad Batch will be getting another season next year. So we've got a lot of live-action content coming up. Right? We got Book of Boba Fett at the end of the year. We've got Andor coming up. We got Obi-Wan Kenobi. We've got Ahsoka. And now we've got Bad Batch season 2. So it was kind of a given. Everybody was talking about that more than likely we would get another season of Bad Batch, so it's nice to see them confirm it up front. It makes me wonder, although I'm a little less... let's see what's... I had some speculation about what the next season would be. A little less speculatory, seeing how this part 1 season finale played out, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So it will be fascinating, obviously, to see where this story goes. I continue to love Omega as a character, and I just keep scratching my head going, okay, what is her story going to be as she gets older? Where is she going to end up, and what role is she going to have in the larger storytelling when we get into the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy? Where is Omega in all of this, right? So I'm very curious to see what happens with her stories. So before we get into this fantastic piece about Palpatine, let's talk a little bit about the Bad Batch Part 1 season finale. I am going to talk spoilers here, so if you haven't watched it yet, pause the show and go and watch it. Like the rest of the Bad Batch, really enjoyed this episode. I like the fact that we're obviously into the end of this season 1 and the last 2 episodes. Was expecting this one to be a little bit longer, but it wasn't. I imagine that next week's season finale will most likely be longer, and I wouldn't be surprised if next week's season finale doesn't mirror the length of the first episode this season, which was essentially like three episodes. But I like the fact that we're back to the main storyline. We're dealing with the situation with Crosshair and the rest of the Bad Batch. Of course, the big reveal in the show, if you believe him, was that Crosshair had his inhibitor chip removed, which raises a lot of questions about his continued desire to align with the Empire, whether or not he actually did have it removed or not. But for me, the highlights of the show was, 1, Omega again. I loved the concept of them returning to Kamino and Omega knowing that there was this secret platform. And the secret platform could only be accessed when you lowered your starship down close enough to the water's edge to trigger the platform to rise up from out of the water so you can land. And then they ended up taking that tube system and that transport underneath the water to go to the actual city. I just thought that was a really cool Star Wars-y concept. I just thought that was neat in and of itself. The whole episode had this air of foreboding to it that I really dug. When this episode, when the Bad Batch is doing the storytelling of the larger story point and not doing the filler episodes of going on missions, this show has absolutely thrived. I'm looking forward to this final season being done and then going back and perhaps watching season 1, but maybe removing some of those filler episodes to just get the full storytelling of the main storylines without having to... Those episodes are fun, but I really do find sort of the cinematic quality and the emotion attached to the larger stories, right? So Omega was definitely one of my favorite aspects of this part 1 of the season finale. Found it really interesting that we ended up in the medical facility where apparently the Bad Batch was made, as was Omega. She obviously had a very emotional connection to that room in and of itself, and the fact that she was the one that ended up helping the Bad Batch get away at the towards the end of the episode. The other thing that I loved about it too, and it almost struck me on an emotional level, was this wrapping up, or the ending of an era, if you will. That's a better way to put it. The ending of an era of what we've seen so far, the destruction of Kamino. We got the very specific Attack of the Clones music upon arrival to Kamino. I mean, I love those movies. I am an unabashed appreciator of Attack of the Clones. I love that movie. And the fact that we got that music, right, really added another level, another layer to the episode to connect it to the prequel trilogy. But Kamino plays a massively important part in the Star Wars lore. And I like the Bad Batch is embracing that. It's telling this story, and it's bringing it to a conclusion. Which leads me to the other part of this show that I really enjoy, and that is we really are witnessing through the Bad Batch the end of the Republic and the rise of the Empire, and slowly seeing that transition. And I'm really, really digging that aspect of the storytelling, and that they're using this show to finally show us how we got there, right? We're filling in these gaps. This would be something that would make for a great film, but I also think that based off of this particular storytelling and the interest that people have, this is the perfect venue for Lucasfilm to go and tell this particular story. Like, it's too big of a story to go and tell simply in a comic book or a novel. Maybe not quite big enough to garner the interest of people to go see it on the big screen. Could be enough for a live action show, but certainly fits and adds weight to the storytelling of the Bad Batch. And at the end of the episode, seeing those Star Destroyers fire on Kamino like that and just kind of going, wow, that's crazy. You know, I mean, I've been living with those prequel movies for so long and knowing the importance of that facility and what it did to the overall storytelling and the creation of the clones, and to see it closed down, to see it empty. And it was really interesting the way that they handled that in the show. There was a brief moment where it wasn't long, and it reminded me of this is an odd thing to be reminded of, but it fits, right? It reminded me of one of the closing shots, or the closing shot of Alien 3. Now, Alien 3 is arguably, well, maybe not so arguably, not a very popular Alien film within the franchise. However, the director's cut of that film is fantastic. It still has some wonky special effects, but the director's cut And it's not really even the director's cut because Fincher wasn't involved. It was kind of Fincher's original cut of the film before the studio made him go and cut it up. Is a really, really good movie. A lot different from the original version. If you're a fan of the Alien franchise at all, and you have not watched the director's cut, doing that thing with my fingers, of Alien 3, you need to check it out, because it is a worthy addition to the franchise. The theatrical release, not so much, but the director's cut is fantastic. But at the end of that, the facility in which the prison planet facility that the story takes place on, at the end they go through room to room to show the empty facility, with a lot of dramatic music going. And I really liked that shot in the Bad Batch of Camino. It wasn't long, but just enough to kind of go around, show the various rooms, show how they were empty. And again, I keep using this word, but it's true. It added this emotional weight and gravity to the situation that was taking place and the destruction of this facility. And again, the end of an era. As always, what do you think? Drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or feel free to go and leave a comment on YouTube. All right, let's dive into the main topic this week about one of my favorite characters in the Star Wars saga, and that would be one Palpatine.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Star Wars Inside Intel is a StarWars.com feature, and Lucasfilm Story Group member Emily Shokukani, whose job it is to know as much about the galaxy far, far away as possible, she explores obscure facts about Star Wars lore and continuity. And in this particular installment, Emily connects the dots of Palpatine's contingency plan. Now, I've heard some complaints about this. Some people call this a retcon. People have been saying that this is Disney trying to make sense of what happened in The Rise of Skywalker. I don't see it as any of those things. There is a long period of time that takes place between The Phantom Menace and the end of The Rise of Skywalker. And the fact that we actually do have a through line of Palpatine through these decades of storytelling, I think is pretty awesome. And I really dig this article, and I want to share it with you. Although Poe Dameron may not have understood how Palpatine returned in Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and was understandably exasperated at the news, it was all part of the contingency. This was a plan anticipated Palpatine's death and prepared for his return to power. And let me say this, too. I don't care what was planned and what wasn't planned. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in listener feedback. But I personally, as a Star Wars fan, don't really give a rip about who planned what and when, what was decided at one point in time. All I care about is the storytelling and does it make sense? And for me as a fan, it does. And I love the storytelling. I've said many times on the show, I consider the Star Wars content that I consume to be, kind of historical documents. This is what happened, regardless of whether or not if I like that particular story. This is indeed what happened, right? Originally introduced in Claudia Gray's Star Wars Lost Stars as a concept, fantastic book, by the way. The contingency itself began in Chuck Wendig's Aftermath trilogy. So after Palpatine, the Emperor, was unexpectedly betrayed and killed by Darth Vader, and word of his death, along with the destruction of the second Death Star, traveled across the Empire. The contingency unfolded as planned. Sentinel droids were dispatched to Imperials throughout the galaxy and advised them on the next steps, starting with Operation Cinder. Now, of course, Operation Cinder was part of the campaign in Battlefront 2, which I've enjoyed and played several times now already. Operation Cinder sought to destroy Imperial and New Republic planets alike, with the goal to destroy sensitive information or other liabilities. The operation was carried out in various ways, including the use of climate disruption arrays, which, once fired upon a planet, would create a catastrophic weather condition, vortex detonators, and customized explosives that made the planet of Narcronus uninhabitable, and the Imperial Navy, who engaged in battles on planets that attempted to resist the operations, such as Naboo, Burnin Khan, as mentioned in The Mandalorian, Abinendo, and more. Operation Cinder was devastating, but it also solidified many allegiances to the newly erected New Republic and saw many Imperials defect due to the brutality of the operation. Now, one major element of the contingency was about a year after the Empire's death at the Battle of Jakku. Led by self-appointed counselor of the Empire, Gallus Rax, he brought the remainder of the Empire to Jakku in a last stand against the New Republic. And I have heard comments made about this, and I agree wholeheartedly. I want to see that committed to some type of Star Wars content, whether it is animated or live action. I would love to see a Battle of Jakku. I think that would be awesome. Lost Stars in and of itself would make for a fantastic movie. But the Battle of Jakku is a pivotal part of the storytelling of the Star Wars saga, and in my opinion, absolutely deserves to have some content created about it. The majority of the Imperials involved in the battle believed that they would retake the galaxy with a victory, but the contingency planned for this to be the conclusion of the Empire. Rax was originally supposed to have the entire planet of Jakku destroyed along with the Imperials as further punishment for failing Palpatine. What was unaccounted for in this plan was Grand Admiral Ray Sloane. An underling of Gallus Rax, Sloane was kept in the dark about the contingency and Rax's involvement. As such, Sloane began to believe that Rax was deviating the Empire from its intended glory. On Jakku, Sloane confronted Rax, where she shot and killed him. Spoiler alert. In his final moments, Rax appointed Sloane to the contingency and urged her to retreat to the unknown regions with Brendel Hux to create a new and better empire. With Rax dead, and thanks to Sloane, Jakku was saved. Rax's plan to completely destroy the Empire did not unfold, with the remnants of the Empire continuing for years following the official end of the war. Sloane would heed Rax's final demands and indeed head for the unknown regions. Now, for many years prior to his demise, Palpatine sought immortality on the Sith planet of Exegol. It was on this planet that he and the cultists, known as the Sith Eternal, experimented with cloning. And as we found out, talk about a connection, as we found out in the Bad Batch episode from this week, that all of the cloning technology was gathered up by Rampart as he spoke to Grand Moff Tarkin, saying that they did get all the technology with regard to cloning. So the Empire now has all of that. Okay, so Exegol was also where Palpatine built his final order fleet. As an immortal Sith, Palpatine would reign supreme over the galaxy with his Sith Armada. This would be the grand finale of the contingency, known only to a select few. Now, when Palpatine was killed on the second Death Star, his consciousness transferred to a clone of his own body on Exegol, but the body was too weak to contain him. This led to Palpatine creating more clones and strand casts of himself in the hopes that one would offer a more suitable vessel for him to inhabit. All of this effort ultimately culminated in Rey, the daughter of one of Palpatine's strand casts. She was the perfect vessel, but her father and mother did everything they could to hide her from her sinister grandfather. Destiny and the contingency would catch up to Rey in the form of the First Order, led by one of Palpatine's evil duplicates called Snoke. Although Snoke was successful in bringing Rey to Palpatine and was unexpectedly killed by his protege Kylo Ren, Palpatine continued to pull the strings in order to reel in his granddaughter so he could finally achieve ultimate power. With the Final Order operational, it slowly deployed from Exegol and pledged to destroy planet after planet. The Resistance worked quickly to counter this new threat. Rey accepted her role as a Jedi and rebel and arrived on Exegol to bring a conclusion to the conflict. Palpatine planned for Rey to partake in a ritual which would allow him to inhabit her body and live forever, but Rey had other plans. With the help of Ben Solo and Jedi Past, Rey took her final steps and defeated the Phantom Menace once and for all. And I love the fact that they've gone through and taken the time, and a hat tip to this, to Emily Shokukani, who put this article together. I was so happy to have heard about it. For one, I didn't realize it was out there. I was watching another show, and they mentioned it, and I was like, what? There's details about this? I hadn't seen this before, and I went and found this article, and again, thought it was really cool that here you have in one article laying out the sort of beginning and the end of what Palpatine had planned all along, and that makes all the sense in the world to me, and I love the fact that now, when I go back and watch, the saga films, prequels, and original trilogy, and sequel trilogy, with this new information, right? New details that we have in background on Kamino from the Bad Batch, and this, information that I pretty much already knew, but seeing it compiled into one complete article, adding more context to the stories that I love so much, it'll definitely enhance my viewing experience upon watching these even more. And I can't help but wonder if that is it's got to be part of the plan that Disney and Lucasfilm has, right? To continue to provide this amazing content, whether it's articles like the one I just read or the Bad Batch or the shows that we have coming up, even though we're playing in a timeline that we're familiar with and we know the larger outcomes based on those saga films, you're getting some amazing storytelling, new characters, stories that we've never heard before. But on top of that, you're also filling in the history and the background of what actually took place, which only goes to, again, enhance the viewing of those particular films, right? It almost ends up serving like the comic books used to do when it comes to the storytelling of Marvel, where now those stories kind of still exist to fill in some backstory, depending on how much of that is canon, to the larger cinematic and now live-action show storytelling that's been taking place. And I love the fact, too, that it does sort of, without intent, push back on those that want to act like, or those that straight up say, that Disney is distancing themselves from the prequels, or that Disney is distancing itself from the sequel trilogy, or that they will use the World Between Worlds from Rebels to completely rewrite the history and forget about the sequel trilogy. That's clearly not the case. Regardless of what you thought about them, these films were successful, and a lot of people, like myself, loved them. And they clearly wouldn't be putting out extensive articles like they did about Palpatine and his contingency plan if they didn't continue to embrace those stories and desired to, again, provide more entertainment value than what you just end up getting on screen, right? One more last point on this, and then we'll move over to listener feedback, and it's just a comment about the rise of Skywalker and how I really do hope we get more Rey storytelling. I was thinking about that reading the Palpatine article, and at the end when they started talking about Rey and they got to the storytelling of the rise of Skywalker, again, a film that I absolutely adore, but we got a really, really awesome character in Rey, and my favorite film with Rey is The Rise of Skywalker. I just think that Daisy Ridley is phenomenal in that role. I think that as a Star Wars, as a Star Wars fan, I love that we got a version of a Jedi once again from beginning to end, and we got that too in Return of the Jedi. Don't misunderstand when it comes to Luke Skywalker, right? He was still kind of going through the motions and had to go and face Vader again, but we got him kind of full-fledged Jedi and kicking butt throughout that movie. But we get that too with Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, and I just think her character is completely compelling in that film, and every moment she's on screen, I just find captivating. And the fact that they really pushed that character to her limits and gave her a lot to do, multiple lightsaber battles, and the standoff in the on the desert in Pisana when she thinks that she killed Chewbacca, but she didn't. Again, I could talk the praises of The Rise of Skywalker for another another hour if I wanted to. But again, that article just reminded me of that. And I really hope we get some content with Daisy Ridley and Rey down the line, and maybe even in an episode 10. As always, what do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. Let's move over to some listener feedback this week.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, first one comes from voice cracked a little bit there. That was weird. First one comes from a friend of the show, Brian Martin, who writes this. Look at the changes someone made to The Rise of Skywalker for his own fan edit. Please list them and tell me what you think of them. Some of them don't make a lot of sense to me. For example, the editor thinks that Rey's line, "That's an excellent name," is too overly modern sounding. So I'm going to be, and I always am, very honest. I'm not going to do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is I don't particularly care what another individual, specifically somebody who made an alternate edit that they think makes the movie better. I don't have any interest in seeing that. I know there's like a Phantom edit of the Phantom Menace that's out there. It's pretty famous, where, they cut down a lot of Jar Jar and all that. And, as a curiosity, it would be interesting, but I'll be honest with you, I just don't have any desire to go through and look at any changes that anybody made to a movie that I don't personally feel needs any changes beyond perhaps the few complaints that I've had about that movie, which is I'd like to see a few other TIE Whisper vehicles, just as confirmation that there was more than one, because one got destroyed and then Kylo Ren got another one, but the other one had the Wayfinder in it, but the first one didn't. I mean, I've written my own headcanon for that, but I would like to have a little bit of an explanation as to that little situation. I'm just assuming again that the TIE Whisper is as plentiful as the Interceptor was in Return of the Jedi. We just didn't see more than one on screen at a time, and I thought it was odd that one got destroyed and yet Kylo Ren showed up. Ended up, showing up on Kijimi. Sorry, the planet name escaped me. She ended up showing up on Kijimi, and he had another one. And that's the one that Rey burned, and it's the one that happened to have the Wayfinder in it. So I just thought that was weird. So, that and the wing on the X-Wing. Like, those two things, both involving ships. Shocking, right? But beyond that, Brian, and no offense to you, man, I'm not going to go and take up time looking at what somebody else wanted to do with the movie and their own fan edit. That just doesn't seem... I've got book 6 to write and podcasts like I'm doing right now to record. But I always appreciate you emailing in. Please continue to do so. But again, I just don't have any interest in looking at what somebody else wanted to do with a movie that I enjoy that much. Friend of the show, Miranda, writes this. Talking about, and I'm going to clarify this here in a second, but talking about last week's Grogu, is Grogu the next Luke Skywalker? Miranda says this. Grogu is the next Grogu. He don't need to be like anybody else. The lad is creating quite a boost to the economy, too, helping to pay the bills at Disney and Lucasfilm. He can be a millionaire and forget the Jedi life, although he would probably give the money to charity or open up a bone broth kitchen. Anyway, I do hope his journey with Luke isn't the only or the last time we see him, because last time we see him with an adventure of his own, a story of his own, like Loki or Boba Fett, perhaps maybe he'll team up with Ahsoka and find Ezra or become her apprentice, maybe. And I want to clarify what I meant. What I meant by Grogu being the next Skywalker, it wasn't like a one-to-one comparison. I just meant it from a standpoint of following a character from the start of their Jedi journey and watching them grow as a Jedi and building storytelling around that character with them being the main protagonist. That's what I meant by that. When you look at the storytelling of Luke Skywalker starting in A New Hope, it's the hero's journey. This is what George Lucas was inspired by, right? Joseph Campbell and, the hero's journey that he laid out, right? That's where George got the initial idea and how he crafted this story with the wise old mentor and the cocky pilot, and the not so damsel in distress, right, with Princess Leia. My only point on last week's show was that Grogu is at a spot where we know him and we've been introduced to him, where, in my opinion, he could be a protagonist that we could also see go on their own hero's journey like Luke Skywalker, hence could he be the next Luke Skywalker? Could he be the next protagonist that we could see go on a hero's journey where he is the main focal point, even though he is an alien? I just think that would be awesome to see. And like I said last week, we know that Yoda eventually talked, so Grogu's going to eventually be yapping when he gets older. So we've got a lot of storytelling that we can do, especially based off the fact that he could live some 900 years and he's only 50 right now. So that character, they're going to do something with, right? They've got the perfect setup to do something with him. And you still have the opportunity to bring in original trilogy characters with him too, like a Chewbacca, just based on the fact that Wookiees, also age differently than everybody else. So that's what I meant. Not to say that, Miranda, you didn't understand that, but I just wanted to clarify that could he be the next Luke Skywalker from the standpoint of, could we see and follow Grogu on a hero's journey as the main protagonist? I think that could be really, really cool. And that wraps up the show this week. Thank you so much for listening, as always. If you have not checked out my science fiction series, EMBARK, I would really encourage you to go and do so. If you're a reader, you have anybody in your family that is a reader, from ages 11 on up. They're written for adults, but they are perfectly fine for kids to read as well, with action and violence on par with Star Wars. Book 1 in the series, EMBARK, is available right now in ebook for only 99 cents. A purchase of the ebook gets you a massive discount on the audiobook. It is also available in paperback as well. 5 books in the series available right now: Treasure in Darkness, The Vanishing War, Gahan Corbijn and the Asteroid of Misfortune, and The Rocket Queen, Book 5, the most recent release. Book 6 is out at my editor and proofreader right now. My beta reader has already had a chance to read it. So one other person on the planet knows the next story besides myself. He enjoyed it. He liked it. Gave me some fantastic notes. I adjusted appropriately, and hopefully I'll have it back in the next few weeks, and I'll have book 6 available sometime by the end of this month. MyNerdWorld.net is the website for all things My Nerd World. Amazon.com. You can search for Jon, Jon Justice, and find my EMBARK stories there, and that is how you can support the show. As always, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did recording it. I got a lot of TV to watch, including the new Suicide Squad movie, which I'm looking forward to watching. And I think I've got Solo in my future this weekend. Been really in the mood to watch Solo as of late. Although, after watching Bad Batch, I kind of want to go and watch Attack of the Clones now, to be honest with you. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll just watch both. Maybe Jon Justice will just do what he does best, and that is sit on his butt watching Star Wars. All right, thanks for checking out the show this week. We're back again next week. And, here's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.